So today is Mindfully Gay Podcast Day, and I I just had the thought. It feels like we keep hitting these really heavy topics, and so I was brainstorming yesterday, and for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to talk about mentorship and maybe talk a little bit about the mentors that have kind of helped shaped our lives and trajectories, gay or otherwise. And uh, yeah, I think, it's interesting, a topic that's come up because Cole has often talked about how he feels like this whole layer of mentorship and eldership was lost through the AIDS epidemic. Um, I've been, certainly there are seniors in our community. What's the relevance of mentors and elderships in our community? And so, I don't know, I just thought this could be kind of a lighthearted, warm reflection on that topic. And
Right. And just on that note, just popped into my head, just that thought of elders, especially gay elders, or even just elders in general, I think. It seems like that's a lost, I won't say lost cause, it's not the right term, but it's just something we just don't see in this culture.
It's icky. I don't know. It sucks, but old is icky. I think is what it is, and so people don't realize that that's wisdom and experience and mentorship. I mean, these are people that have literally gone through the trials and tribulations, the struggles, everything you have, and I agree. I think I know. I think that that's part of it. I think that just people don't look at old people the way that they maybe should. They don't have the respect that they do, and so it kind of gets. And especially when it comes to the issue of gay elders, I mean, unfortunately, it's just not. Getting older is not a sexy topic in the gay world,
Right.
And so maybe that too is kind of, a mark against them that shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean. It's just kind of a lost. It's strange, but it shouldn't be. We should change that. We should do something about that.
Right, right. It's just something we just don't see in this culture. There's no ceremonial kinds of rituals or rites of passage, that an elder or someone of, prominence or whatever that kind of guides you through, life and learning life lessons. We just don't seem to have that.
And if I may, I think where it can maybe happen now, and it's a reflection of kind of just the weird system and the way that it is elder care. Like if you do end up actually caring for someone that's elder, then there is an opportunity because you're caring for this person, maybe for some mentorship, for some storytelling, to understand life and learn from them. But that is happening more and more because our healthcare system is where it is, and it's total crap, and we need people to help. Help along these people, these elder people later in their lives, and maybe there's an opportunity there to learn from them. But
for sure,
beside from that, right? It's not. We don't have the ceremony. We don't have the reverence and respect for it.
Mm-hmm.
Like clearly it was back in the day. I mean, with Native American people's songs, if I may, those weren't written. Those were always given orally. They were passed down. And those elders were living libraries.
Yes, exactly.
Well, it's interesting. I just came back from Mongolia, and if an elder walks into the room, a senior person, or into the yurt, they call them gyrs, literally everything stops to accommodate the elder, to create space for the elder, to make sure that the elder is sitting up front. And it's interesting. Gabor Mate makes a really interesting observation about aging, and I'll just paraphrase that. What he says is that when people no longer are participating in the systems of capitalism, they stop becoming non-relevant. And in our culture, it's like if you're not producing, then we put you on the shelf.
Exactly.
But I think I want to redirect this a little bit. I think maybe we've established the relevance of this topic, but I would like us to reflect on maybe our own experiences with mentors or teachers or people who have had that kind of impact in our lives that shifted the trajectory of our lives.
Mm-hmm.
On Instagram, I shared a story in high school, which was like in the late 70s, early 80s. But, you know, I grew up in rural Michigan, would not necessarily describe my family system as the most supportive or nurturing place. And I was a very shy, awkward, closeted, scared kid.
Mm.
And got into high school, and I was in an English class, and this teacher, Donna Shear, for whatever reason, we were studying the story of Anne Frank, and our school was producing the play.
Oh, wow.
And she just suggested, we had a rather well-developed theatrical program in our school. And she's like, well, why don't you come after school and help us build the stage for this thing?
Mm.
And I had never considered theater or performing. I mean, that was just way outside of my realm. But it was interesting. I got involved in the stagecraft part of this play. And which there was another teacher by the name of Jackie Plaza. And what's interesting is neither one of them seemed very daunted by my own personal image of myself. And I recognized throughout high school that they facilitated opportunities for me to expand. And the idea of public speaking scared the shit out of me. And Jackie assigned me as an impromptu speaker in this coaching program. And I did other kind of theater at the time and did some singing in the choir and musicals. But it really brought me out front. And really, here I am 60, and I still think about the impact that those moments had in my life as I'm sitting on a podcast, as I'm give lectures and discussions to rather large audiences, that I don't think I would have ever had the courage to do what I'm doing today if those two hadn't set the stage. And
it's really nice to be able to reflect and have things like that, right? Know that when it happened, the catalyst, like the people that were kind of responsible for fostering something that you were definitely not thinking about then, but now look at how it's come. Look at what you do. Like it's such a foundational thing for you.
And Facebook is such an interesting world because I'm actually friends with Donna Shear on Facebook. I think she lives somewhere up in New England, but what's interesting is she still kind of has that glow about her. You can just tell by the pictures and the things that she reports on Facebook. And Jackie Plaza was also, I don't see so much of her. And it's interesting, she was my mother's, my mom did not like her at all. But I think Jackie was somebody who was really quite specific, and she wasn't critical, but she could give you really great direction. And I found that really powerful in my life. So I'm wondering, I mean, I'd like to get into gay mentors too, but I'm just kind of wondering, I know you talked about a school teacher, but is there...
Yeah, just to comment on what you just said, I think it's just remarkable, especially, as we reflect on our childhood, and being young and just trying to figure out the world and ourselves, that someone saw you.
Yeah.
They saw something in you.
That you couldn't see yourself.
That you couldn't see yourself. And that they took it upon themselves to steer you, hopefully, in the right direction. That they saw something in you. I get emotional about that.
No.
It's so special.
That's what the world needs more of.
Yes.
Just that. Someone being altruistic and seeing like, I know how to, and I totally agree. The world needs more of those, that mentoring, that type of moment, especially in those younger years, because it literally sets the trajectory for a human. It
sets the stage. And so mine is kind of similar. I mean, someone who observed this little black kid in Catholic school by the name of Henrietta Pajot. She was my 4th grade teacher.
I love it.
And she was, I know, isn't that a great name?
A great
And she
name.
was known as like the strictest teacher in the school. So this is a little tiny school, Catholic school in Oakland. It went from 1st grade to 8th grade, and it wasn't very big, right? And that's where I went to school. And so by the time I got Miss Pajot, and everyone was fearful of Miss Pajot, somewhere in that school year, she must have seen something in me. Granted, Catholic school, small school, they didn't offer much. It was a good education. I think it set us up okay, I guess, for junior high and maybe even high school. But it didn't offer much. As far as extracurriculars, they had choir, and that was it. So I did choir. And that was the only kind of outside thing. There was no kind of sports, or I think there was a Christmas play. Maybe that was it. But this teacher, I think, just saw something in me and went to my parents and said, Mr. and Mrs. Cottrell, you need to get John out of this school.
Wow.
You need to get John out of this school. He's not being nourished enough.
Wow.
He's a talented kid, and he's not getting what he needs from this school. And my parents took heed. And so I was 4th grade, I stayed until 6th grade, and they got me out of that school. And I went to this private school in Oakland, and it was very interesting because it was this ritzy school, but it offered stuff that would really nurture, engage me and nurture my talents. And it did. I think
what an amazing thing she did.
Yeah. And what's another fun little fact about that, she was my 4th grade teacher, but she ended up being our librarian at the high school I went to. And so, so she saw me a little bit later in life, as a little older kid, and she was the same. She just, and I think I remember, thanking her.
That's so cool.
Because I think she saw me even thrive in high school, because it was a pretty good high school, and she saw me just kind of thrive there.
She was responsible.
And I think she was partly responsible for that.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's funny. Years after high school, I contacted Donna Shear. I hunted her down and said, "Hey, my name's Jerry Bowie," and she remembered me. And
wow.
I said, "I just have to tell you this." And there was all this ruckus going on, and I was starting to say, "I'm so grateful for what you did for me." She's like, "Everyone, stop what you're doing. Like, I need to hear this."
Love that. Oh, yeah.
Wait, so let me start then at the end of mine. Let me start with my story, but where you just went. And so this is a counselor, a high school counselor, and he's the reason why I went to BU. He's the reason why I left Utah and got to discover gay life and gay family. I mean, he was the reason I got out to the East and I got to leave this place. And I remember a couple years into school, I talked with him on the phone from Boston, but I was already like a year into being gay and I wasn't here. And I remember the thing that was so hard for me in my mind, because I was appreciative of this person because it was so critical in what, and ultimately ended up happening to me and me being who I am. But the lives were crossing. Like, I wasn't out yet, but I was kind of out in Boston, but I was. And so taking the phone call from him and from high school, it was really, it was tough for me. It was hard. It wasn't a great talk. It wasn't, and hearing you say that you followed up with that woman makes me think I should follow up with him now and maybe have a better conversation. But anyway, so mentor for me was a high school counselor. He was alumni at BU, Boston University. He's the one that convinced me to apply. He helped me with entrance essay. He connected me with that psychologist, the woman that worked in the prison system. He did so much for me to saw something in me that I was certainly not seeing in myself. And that last year of school, I only had one class to graduate, and he pushed me to take classes at UVSC. They had a satellite campus in Park City. So I took all psych courses and some creative writing classes. Got exposure with professors that talked about naughty things. And I just remember it was so different than North Summit High School. It was a really oh, wow, this is what it can be like Friends had just launched then, so that theme song was huge for me because that was me going to school. Like there was just
Oh,
I don't know, it
wow.
was just such there were so many. Anyway, he was just such a he saw something in me that I didn't. I started a PHP, we called it Peers Helping Peers program, where me and a couple other students, we used to tutor people that needed it after school type of thing, and he helped me with that program.
Wow.
But yeah, definitely, gosh, somebody that saw something that I just would never have seen and was so responsible and just who and how and where I am today, I guess. But yeah, I miss him. Greg Bell was his name.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good man.
Mm.
It makes me think of, as I was saying earlier, where there's no kind of ritual or, the elders that we go to who are always there, that we go to for wisdom and knowledge and guidance. But it seems like it's just these people that kind of show up in our lives. They may not be mainstays, that we just kind of pass through, like a counselor or a school teacher or something. You see them for a couple years and you move on and they're kind of gone. But it's those people, I think, that are those markers that have been they laid the stones to help you
go this way.
Yeah, go this way.
Yeah.
And if you're, I don't know, not necessarily, I guess, just open enough to take their guidance, you just kind of walk along on that path. And so when I think of it that way, it's like, well, there's a lot of people in my life who were those folks, who were a light, who were a stone that got me through the darkness or got me to that next step. And as I was thinking about this, there's another individual who I would consider, and I haven't thought about this person in a long time, I probably would consider a gay mentor, who I met. I was in my early 20s probably, and at the time I was a volunteer care provider, I guess you can say, for people living with AIDS. And so he was one of the people I went to his house and helped him clean his house. And we became very good friends. He was an older gentleman. His name was John. And he was an artist, and he made stained glass. And so he would show me all his stained glass. He was just this beautiful, beautiful man. And he would I would go to his house once or twice a week or something like that and get into these conversations and talk. And one of the things he said to me, and it just stuck with me, because I was a young queer boy, basically. I was out, but I was early on. But he said something, he described me in a certain way that I'd never heard before. He says, "John, you move gracefully. You're a graceful man." And I was...
You never gave yourself grace before. You never, right.
I just never heard that word
Mm.
attached to me before. It was never described that way before. And it was interesting, and it stuck.
No, can I just say, that's definitely a word I have for you. Always has been. You do move with grace. The way you physically move, the way you, even psychologically, like, you are very graceful, and it's amazing. Okay, so now we've kind of maybe found the point at which that kind of, boom, that pin stuck with you.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate that. Thank you. But I think it was him that, stuck a pin in it, and it was, and I claimed it. At first I was confused by it, but then
it was there, right? But he needed to point it out to you. It was in you, but you didn't recognize it and acknowledge and give it to yourself. But he recognized it and said, "Oh, you have this," and then from there it flourished. Maybe.
Yeah, and I don't think it would have come from a straight man, but this came from a gay man. I don't think any other type of person or any other person would have said that to me about me, besides a gay man. So that resonated pretty deeply.
And again, you were in a situation where you were caring for him, and it just lends to this mentoring opportunity, maybe. And I think, if I can, to people listening, the world does need more of it. The world does need more of caregivers. The world does need more of mentoring. And I think that, if you're inclined, if you have just even what we've just discussed, how impactful these crossings have been and the way in which they changed our lives, the trajectory of it. I mean, just be so aware of like, that is such an important part of our communities that we need to contribute to. Not only caretaking for those that are older that need it, and then perhaps there's a mentoring that, of course it will. You're going to learn from them. You're going to hear their stories and their wisdom, and it could maybe only happen that way. But then on the flip side, as an individual that has some life experience, be aware that you could have such a humongous impact on an individual's life and their understanding and where they go and who they become and who they then end up helping in life. Like it's a very cyclical thing, but it takes doing it. It takes that man saying you have grace. It's something so simple, but it's profoundly impactful. But we all are imbued with this responsibility too, as what are we? We're custodians of our community.
Love that. Also reminds me of, the 4 agreements. What's the first agreement? Be impeccable with your word. Because even if you're not set out to be a mentor, I'm mentoring you. I think it's still very important, whoever you might come in contact with.
As an example,
for
sure.
Right? To be impeccable with
fortitude.
Well, a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about online etiquette.
Yeah.
Like on the apps, right?
Yeah.
And I've been having this reoccurring thought that, it's interesting. We work so feverishly to promote gay rights and to be seen by the general public. And we want to be integrated and we want to be, fully realized by our broader community. And I often think the thing that will keep us from that goal is how we treat each other.
Yes.
And, we're talking a little bit about how these kind words kind of push us in a particular trajectory. Isn't it interesting, the language and how we refer to ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Pig, dominant, right? We use these.
Yeah.
I'm a bear. I'm an otter.
Thanks.
And I get the context of that, but I also think it's interesting that this language that we use is so derogatory. And then just when people are inconsiderate, like, if someone contacts me, I will at least say good morning. I will acknowledge them. Look, the moon is rising.
Is that a sunrise? Is that sunset or sunrise? Anyway, yeah. Sorry.
I even do that. If someone sends me a text message, even if I don't feel like I need to respond, I will at least send a thumbs up. Like, I saw it.
Yeah.
And by seeing it, I see you.
Yes.
And I think it's interesting in our culture that, because you were just talking about how old isn't sexy, and I think,
just like we are actively working to make it sexy. There's no doubt. Like I know the 3 of us, the way we're keeping up with
3 hours,
whatever. but we're gonna change that shit. Who was it? I'm sorry, I know I derailed your thought. Who was it that said that? No, this is a mentor of yours. Was it Charles? Yeah, that said, I'm actively changing the trajectory of aging or something like that.
The narrative.
The narrative, yeah. The narrative, of what it means to be. You're right. That's the type of work. I mean, yes, but you're right. Right now, where the things are at, old is icky.
Well, which is unfortunate because I think it goes back to this paradigm that we keep kicking around, right? That our narrative, our queer narratives tend to be very objectifying, that we look at a body and we assess its quality, we assess its value. Sometimes what I like to tell people online when they're like, you're too old, it's like, well, that's okay, your youthful inexperience won't bother me.
Your awkwardness, right? Like you're fumbling with every word won't bother me.
Yeah, and as I'm listening to this, I'm just thinking, in light of those that we've been mentored by, right? Like I'm thinking, I've had some really good gay mentors. My friend Clyde Hall really revolutionized my thinking about what it meant to be gay. drawing from his traditions, and he's a highly educated man. Um, really was a deep invitation to see myself in the sacred capacity. I met Harry Hayes through him. I think it's interesting. One of the things we do at our retreat, right, is we build the gay altar.
Right.
And we give everyone an assignment to research a gay elder, mentor, someone who shifted the trajectory of culture as we know it. And it requires people to kind of get out there and figure out. In our last retreat, right, we had this amazing table of eldership that I don't think most people gave credit to. And so I guess I'm just kind of putting this out here because I think in light of what I'm hearing you guys say is we're, as much as we like being mentored and the value of that, is we all have this opportunity to be not just the apprentice, but to also be the mentor, that we're ushering in this new culture of queer identity that I think I know I find myself in this conflictual place. I went to 2 Pride events this year, and I thought, wow, the nature of Pride events have changed so much. And for instance, I'm not saying I have a bias here. I probably do have a bias, but I'm just stating that there was so much gender diversity at these Pride events that I've not witnessed in the past.
Right.
And was really quite contemplative about what does that mean? What's the trajectory for gay and lesbian identities in the wake of the gender revolution? And did we get it wrong? Or did we open the doors for those to find more fluidity in their expression? Was that unintended mentorship? Right?
Right.
But I'm wondering, what if we took inventory about how do we show up as mentors? Like, what is the influence we have?
Well, I like what John said about its example, right? It's how you conduct yourself as a gay man in this world day in and day out. And there are opportunities that you may not be aware of, but it's how the other gays see you conduct yourself and the way in which that might influence them. And that too can be very profound. You can get mentorship by not ever meeting a person, right? You can see things that inspire you to behave or adopt a certain thing and be like that. And that becomes who you are for the rest of your life. And, if you go through and litigate it, you might find that that's how and when it happened because you saw John, conduct himself on a text on Scruff or whatever. And it was not what it normally was. It set an example of this is a wild ass environment with buttholes everywhere, but we can still see each other. We can still treat each other like humans and have that respect for each other. I don't know. I think it's important to take on or to remind yourself that you're being watched, and it's not a pressure or anything, but I think it does. It just helps you understand the importance of how you act and behave in this community, and the examples that you just unknowingly are providing for others. Because I know, without a doubt, through people listening, our community is much more vast than we know, right? Than we're hearing from or we're seeing at retreat or whatever it may be. There are many others that maybe aren't ready to be physically present in all of this, but they're still getting some mentorship. They're still getting some example of how to be, they're still getting lessons from elders. They're getting some of it from us. And so I don't know, for me, it makes me feel better. I don't know, it makes me just feel better about conducting myself in a way that I know that I'm proud of, that I know that if I knew a younger gay was watching and started emulating or whatever, I would be like, okay, that's good. That's going to serve you well. I don't know. I guess that's how I feel about showing up. It's just a better awareness of, I'm just more mindful about how I how I put myself out there, what I'm doing. I mean, yes, I'm still making porn and I'm definitely still doing that, but I'm doing that in a way that does sound funny. But it's not, we've always conducted ourselves in a way that, this is funny. Wow, here we go. So thinking about, here we go. I'm going to get billed for this therapy session. But thinking about like my dad watching porn and my porn and confronting me on it. And I've always thought, it's not that I want him to necessarily. Inheritance. No, not that I want him to or anything, but it's just that I think I always very quickly on, because of how my partner and I have done this porn business, because I know we've always had a lot of eyes watching us. And so we've been very, upfront about testing, about the conversations, about how to, talk with partners about what they want and beforehand, just things that maybe don't always happen, And so what I'm getting at is, if my dad were to say, what about this porn that you guys have been doing? And I always thought if that ever came up, I would tell him how proud I am of it, how proud I am of how it's put me in a community and the conversations I've had with people. Yes, there's been a ton around sex, but there's also been quite a few connections made that have not been sexual, and that mentoring has happened, and that people have turned to us. I just yesterday got a message from someone, you guys are the reason why I fuck like I do, or what is, we're giving examples of things that maybe mommies and daddies don't teach their little gay boys about.
Exactly.
And so we're kind of, I feel proud about putting that out there. So what I'm saying is, be mindful of how you put yourself out into the world and the contribution you're making, because people are watching and they can take that on as in this world we're living in. Mommies and daddies aren't talking about some of the things that we're talking about. And so these younger gays are finding it from us, and they're getting what they need, in the sense of growing and progressing and moving forward.
That makes a lot of sense, because and you're saying something that I think a lot of people don't know, especially those who might be fans of your work, is that behind the scenes, and even getting your partners that go on camera with you, that there's a whole kind of a screening process, and you're really talking about just the care of the individual and this whole situation and how this is going to go. And I would imagine that these guys are going, oh, thank you,
This is how it's done.
This is how it's done.
Consent, lots of consent.
Yeah, consent and safety and all these things.
And that becomes titillating. It's exciting, and it's okay to talk about it. And for sure.
Right? And so they're probably walking away from the experience like, oh wow, these guys really know what they're doing, and they are mindful about this work. And as they, I'm just, I'm assuming and guessing, and I'm hoping also that when they have other sexual encounters, they remember what they learned from YouTube, right? So I think that's so important, about, leading by example. This is how I want to present myself in the world. I've got two kind of slants to that. When I was first coming out, or just discovering that I was gay, and even trying to put some words around that, like, what's this feeling? What is this? What's going on? And this is early 70s, right? And so my example of gay people, and we've talked about this, I've talked about this on the podcast before, were these flamboyant, gay whoever's on television, right? Or they were child abusers or murderers, or just something really dark and scary. But as far as like, they were the comedic relief, and they were the sidekicks, and very flamboyant. And I'm like, is that me?
Yeah.
No.
Right.
I don't want to.
Do I have to be
those things? Do I have to be that to be gay? I can't be
gay then, right?
Exactly. I'm like, I don't know.
Very same.
So in a way, I kind of shut all that down.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I'm not going to be that. So I need to kind of put all these layers and masks on, really, to kind of be in the world, so I can be safe and not be ostracized, because that's what's happening to those folks, right? But as it turned out, I think it actually helped me. It actually helped me to kind of diversify who I am as a gay person, that I certainly I now can identify with that very flamboyant queen who's, just kind of out there and doing their thing, and I'm kind of reserved and quiet, and and people who know me have seen different parts of me. And they see this whole, as Jerry laughs. I've known Jerry for almost 30 years, and Jerry
I've seen it all.
He's seen it all. And that's my point, is that people really, I think, get, if you've known me for a while, you get this full spectrum of John Cottrell and who this guy is.
Yeah.
You know, he's not just this gay guy, you know, he's this, he does this and he's that and he's this and, you know, this little list of things, right?
And all of which you couldn't have seen in the beginning.
No.
Examples you saw. I know, I mean, think about, you know, the movie Mannequin?
Yes.
Okay, Hollywood. Remember Hollywood?
Yes.
Hollywood, honey.
Hollywood, yes.
Right, so Hollywood's a perfect example.
Oh my God.
Like, I mean, I remember sitting there watching, my mom was laughing, thinking, okay, it's okay. Okay, this, all right, yeah, he's good. I don't think I'm going to be like that, but I get it. It's funny. But yeah, that's exactly the same thing. Like growing up for a long time, and I had to put on layers because I just didn't know how I was going to be. I knew I couldn't quite be that, but and so yeah, and so, but this is a discussion for younger people.
Yeah.
I think we're probably, without a doubt, we're in a different time now. I mean, we've got a lot more mainstream examples of what being gay is, and all the spectrum, like you're talking about. There's a lot more representation along the spectrum.
Yes.
But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So I'm just hoping, just to wrap my thing up, my hope is that, you know, I'm in my mid-50s, and I just hope that I am showing up as my real self, and young people, gay people especially, can just see that, oh, John's this guy, you know, John's the regular guy, and you get what you get when you're around me, and I'm hoping, I don't know, is that a mentorship kind of space?
You are not regular.
You're not a pot of regular.
You cannot use the words normal or regular. I think you're extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I think people
graceful
need to look at you and say, I want parts of you and me. I was actually thinking about this morning. I thought, you know, we're talking about mentors. And I was thinking for a minute, like, what you teach me whenever we do a retreat, like, I just know I can look at John and trust his calm presence that communicates all will be well. And I know that you have this capacity to hold space for whatever shows up. I think that's extraordinary.
Yeah.
I don't know that I've ever experienced a judgmental bone out of you.
Really?
I don't know what you're telling people about me later, but
exactly. Holy shit, Jerry! Wait, yeah, no. Anyways.
Well, but see, I think you emulate qualities that I would want my gay son to see and emulate.
Yeah, for sure.
I think you're an example of something extraordinary. And I was thinking, it's interesting, my roommate and I were talking downstairs. We're both training with Nick. And she made the comment that he's just the best cheerleader. And I know you have this exterior about you, but I also know that there are people that touch your heart that you really want to help.
Yeah.
And they stick with it because they know you'll support them and cheer them on. And again, I think you're an example of these qualities that I would want my gay son to emulate.
Well,
you know, this kindness and this generosity. So I'm sorry, just when you said regular, I'm like, no. In fact, I wish more gay, queer men in our community understood that our culture as we live it today would not exist with the vibrancy that it does. The reason that exists, that vibrancy in our American culture, is because queer people have infused it into the arts, into fashion, into how we show up in the world and how we love in the world. That these are not deficits, but these are qualities that all communities could benefit from.
Right.
That's my tangent for today.
I hear that, and thank you.
And not to sour that, but what is interesting, I think one of the challenges, like all three of us have very unique venues. And I know both of you well enough and myself well enough to know that we represent particular strengths, right? Sex positive, body positivity, trust in people, your fluidity, your gracefulness, your Hollywood voice, right? And yet it's interesting that I know what pains me, and I know it's my issue is, boy, there are people who with precision will find our weakest links. They'll find our chinks. They'll find that place that propel us into doubt. And that's why I kind of brought up the whole online thing, right? Is how well do we know who we're talking to? And what would happen to the conversations if we really embarked on amplifying each other's strengths as opposed to saying the negative things that we propel at people? You know, you do things naked and you're a sex thing, and I'm not always perfect in how I communicate things. And guess what? I know all that. Mm-hmm. I don't need you to point it out. Mm-hmm. You know, even this podcast, you know, there are people who will take exception and how can you say those things? I'm not an expert on anything, and I'm not an authority on anything. I just have my opinion. And all we're trying to do here is stimulate conversation. Right. And sometimes people miss the ambition of the conversation and want to attack messengers. Sure. And so I'm wondering if we were trying to mentor someone in that role, how would we challenge them to go beyond the naysayers, if you will? I think I need this guidance.
Well, but I think, you know, it's how well do you know yourself then, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're having somebody say you're an old shit or whatever the fuck it is, these morons say.
It's true.
Well, whatever. But no, it's not true. It's not true. Okay, we all three know here that does not fit any one of us here. But it's so I don't know. I know what you're saying. Like it's a place, it's a thing that needs to change.
The critic is powerful.
Yeah, but the self-critic is the most powerful, right? So when that person over there who knows nothing about me says something, and they're clearly going through shit, but they've said something that I kind of maybe still think about myself or whatever, I push into a corner and I think I'm okay because I'm this and that and I'm running 10 miles a day, but it's still there. And they can say it, and it'll bring it right back up, and all of a sudden it seems like it's valid because this person 2,000 miles away who knows nothing about me has said something that I've kind of held, some type of baggage that I've held on to. Mm-hmm. I think that it's too lofty to say, you know, we need to start being better with each other. We need to start treating each other with respect. I get it, but I don't think that's the path to making it happen. I think the better place is to get better with yourself. And know who you are yourself and feel, you know, a better sense of confidence with the good things about yourself. Give yourself credit, for Christ's sake, about all of these good things. Know that person internally, be confident with that understanding. And then that's how you are out in this world. And then, still the morons are going to come about, but, you know, they haven't taken the time to understand who they are, perhaps, is what it is. You know, I don't know. Is that kind of an answer?
I think it's an answer. And I would add on to that. It's, you know, it is about knowing yourself. the light part of self and the shadow parts of self.
Yeah.
I would just add that
Yeah.
piece, the shadow parts of self. So then you know yourself wholly, so that if someone happens to make a comment and they don't even know you from Adam, that you can just go, yeah, I am aware about that. I am aware of that about myself,
right,
and
yeah.
what else is new?
Yeah.
Rather than getting all reactive and maybe defensive and confrontive because someone's pointed at something, and it happens to be one of your dark shadow pieces. But if you've done your work, I don't know, if you've talked to a therapist, or you have friends or colleagues or confidants that you can open up and be your full self, in order to get to know yourself, then you can show up fully, I think, out in the world.
Showing up fully.
Yeah, show up fully.
That's the work.
And another, kind of going back to the 4 agreements, don't take things personally, right? Because usually it's not
Challenge.
about, right? It's not about you. It's usually about them. And even the positive things, if someone says something negative to you, don't take it personally. But even if they say something positive about you, don't take it personally.
Yeah.
Because these are things you already know about yourself.
Right.
If they are saying something positive about you, it's also a reflection of how they may even see themselves. And that's good. So yeah, I think in order to be, well, not in order to be a good mentor, it's just, if you want to just show up fully, get to know yourself.
And I do think that is I agree, Jerry, about your observation about John, about there's always this calmness about, I always view it as confidence, and I always have viewed it as John. I think that John knows himself. I think that you really have a good, solid understanding with who you are in this world. And I think because of that, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm totally wrong. I'm sorry if I am. But I think,
who am I? Who am I? Can you tell me, please?
This bullshit right now. No, but I do feel that that's how I've always, that's what I've always felt. Grace, I'm so glad you brought the word grace, because it definitely is something that I've always thought you're so graceful. But your calmness, this like container of, we've got this calmness that you have, I've felt that it's because you have a solid understanding of the man that you are in this world. And I respect that. I hope that's accurate, but I mean, not to put pressure or anything, but that is, I think that's what it is you get to this place of understanding with yourself. Yeah, you've maybe got a couple demons, but they're not as insane as they were, because you've done some work, and that feels good to show up and do that type of work for yourself or with someone, or however it may be. Mm-hmm. But then you get to a certain point with that type of stuff that you, I'm not as, I know for me personally that maybe that's where I'm coming more from, but I know that I'm less anxious about things, the barbecue, that I would normally have to have a drink before going to. I'm more confident in who I am and who I can be with the person or people or whatnot. And so it produces this calmness that I think others can recognize. And that's no one wants to get mentorship from someone that seems crazy, right? Like, it doesn't, I don't want you're crazy. But when you see someone that's calm and confident, I don't know, I'm drawn to that. I like that. I like that quality in humans. When I see crazy, I think, all right, we could probably be friends for a little bit. But when I see calm and cool, like a cucumber, confident and graceful, it's very like, I have things to learn from you.
It just means low maintenance.
No. Low maintenance is true. It's true. There's high maintenance is low maintenance. You're right.
I'll pull in a little shamanic piece here. In some native traditions, there's a tool that's used, a eagle whistle. And it's a bone that comes from the wing of the eagle, and it's about this long. And when it's done, you blow this whistle, and it represents like a distressing signal to the ancestors, and they respond to that and they come to you. And but to make this whistle is a very arduous process. You have to boil the bone, and you have to clear out the bone. It has to be completely hollow in order for it to work. And so if you look through one of these whistles, it is so cleaned out that it's like glass on the inside.
Wow.
And the metaphor is that we're all working to become like the hollow bone. So if we're learning how to work with ancestral medicines and spiritual medicine gifts, then you need to become like the hollow bone, which means I'm working on the vessel of who I am. So when I have people who like to apprentice in learning the rituals and spirit journey, and there's different tools. There's like a medicine pipe, and there's different tools, and people want to come and learn how to shake the rattle. If I shake the rattle, then I have the power, and it's like, but it's not the shaking of the rattle. It's the becoming like the hollow bone, and that is the willingness to kind of dismantle these pieces of myself and to examine them so that I'm no longer hostage to them. And the thing about the hollow bone is it's an ongoing process. I think I've done a pretty good job of becoming like the hollow bone, and yet there are times in my life, and it's interesting, kind of moving into my senior years, I'm recognizing, well, there's a whole new piece of luggage to go through.
There's some more calcification in the hollow bone, right? Yeah.
Time to bring out the brush, right?
Right.
And so part of what I'm hearing, right, the quality of that mentorship, and the feedback we hear most about the podcast is the willingness to have conversations about things we didn't know we needed to have conversations about, right? In terms of who are we as gay people? I think that's the value of the retreat, is people stop what they're doing long enough to decompress and to look at those stories and to work through them and to liberate aspects of themselves. And I know we're having people show up at some of the fitness classes that might not otherwise have shown up, but they're open to having this new experience, or lodge or whatever.
And that is what you're just saying. That was really powerful. You just said it in like 2 sentences, I think, but it's getting to the point where you can essentially find the things that aren't serving you well, and you can itemize them, you can litigate, whatever, you can get them out to separate, and then you can start to work on them. And I'll tell you, for me, aging, that has been the thing that has been most profound for me, is to finally get to a point where I'm not just this fucking hamster in a wheel, just running around with all this stupid bullshit all the time, every day, to the point where I can just like stop and say, okay, I'm really annoyed with these things that this makes me feel uncomfortable. This is a warning sign or something, whatever it is, as opposed to, I hate this, I change this about myself, to, okay, I'm feeling this, it means I'm not comfortable in a situation. What does this mean? Like getting to a different place with stuff, right, and starting to, I mean, at least in terms of getting older, getting out of, I guess, probably my 30s, I don't know, maybe getting out of my 30s on, was able to start doing that more. And that, it's not picking up the rattle and shaking it. It's doing the work so that you can become the person that picks up the rattle and shakes it. Yeah. And I think that it really feels good to finally get to that point where you just have greater control over your mind. It's not controlling you. And that, I don't know, that was, I'm sorry, I don't know how I got here, but but you had just said that was a super profound thing for me, that getting to that place, time in my life where I could start to do that. And I didn't do it on my own. I definitely had a lot of support, therapists or whomever I worked with to get there. But that was a great, that just feels really good to get to that place in life.
And I want to add, just as I kind of step back and look at my elders and teachers, Jerry has certainly been a significant teacher in my life. And, I've talked about, people who just kind of pass through life and they're just kind of this, one-stop shop and they're kind of gone. But Jerry and Bruce have been these monuments in my life. And I've learned so much. Jerry is my teacher. He is my guru. He is my shaman. He is my Paco. He has shown me, you just heard him say these things. I just got another learning moment right there with the whistle, the eagle whistle. Another learning moment. And I feel that Jerry has really stepped into his leadership and gift and mentors, all those words, and even beyond the labels. I remember a time when we would sit in lodge, and Jerry would kind of give instruction, and he would say, so if you want to ask me something, you can ask, you can call him, you can say grandfather, but don't call me grandfather. Don't call me that.
Uncle.
He would say uncle, right? But I think now he's sitting in that space of grandfather.
Yeah, doing it well.
He's sitting in that space very confidently and securely, and people sit at his lap, and receive his blessings and receive his teachings. He is grandfather, and that's such a beautiful gift, and I think that's what he contributes to my life, but also contributes to Mindfully Gay in this group, in the retreats. If you just want to be in the presence, we're talking about, we're just just showing up as we are. That's exactly, I think, what we're doing. We're showing up as we are, without pretense, without arrogance. We're just showing up as we are. And I think if people were to be in our presence, they would get an honest reflection of who we are and what we, how we show up in the world.
That is what happens at retreat. That is what happens in that first circle, is that people's armor of crap starts coming off, and they are able to, in that moment, show up as who they are. And like, we all start working towards that more in that retreat. And I just remember that's what really is, one by one, people started crying, people started saying things, started contributing and getting emotional, getting there. But the protective crap comes off. We're all here, stepping towards becoming who we are. And it's deep. It is in awe. It's a deeply profound thing to witness something like that.
Well, thank you for your words. Continue. No.
I got more.
As you were talking, I thought, grandfather, like, oh, naughty grandfather. But I say that not to like be self-critical, but in acknowledgement that I believe I've hit those milestones, and I'm also very conscious of the work that I'm still doing. And I think I've shared this story before, when Bear Boy and Meladoma were passing away, I was with them. And the most recent was when Meladoma passed away, and he was, his request to us was, I just need one more day to finish my work. And he was talking about that work of, there's things I need to resolve before I cross over, and I need to do that within myself. Yeah. And that was such a powerful moment to think, oh, even at the finish line, we're still working.
We're still working. Yeah.
And always will treasure that brief moment because it was so profound. I have a deep conviction. And I think sometimes my frustration is not knowing how to actualize the conviction, because I believe the premise of Mindfully Gay, this podcast, the events and the retreats, have very powerful consequences in our community. I think for me, the doubt is perhaps not recognizing how to draw people into it, and to bring them across into that place of having this adventure with consciousness, and this adventure with spirituality in the context of, in the absence of dogma, and in the presence of what intuitively is real for you, what resonates with you. I don't know, maybe some of our viewers have ideas about what are the things that hold them back. But I do believe, I was thinking about, in all the podcasts in the world, there's not a lot of podcasts that are doing what we're doing. There's lectures, there's experts, and yet I really believe collectively And what I'd really like to do, and we were talking about this earlier, is finding 2 or 3 guests that we can bring in who are just part of the community to kind of integrate them into the conversation as guest stars, if you will, kind of like what we've done with Cole. But I believe despite the crazy antics and the mean things that we sometimes see, I think deep down in the consciousness of our community is a desire to love and to be loved. And if we're willing to self-engineer and tap into our own authenticity, I believe we would see more of that in the venues that we use.
Sure.
Yes.
And
I believe that.
And as lofty as that is, I also know that it's challenging. Even for me as an individual, there are times where I don't know that I'm always very good at loving. I don't know that I'm always very good at receiving love. But I know that it's critical to what we're creating.
But that what you're saying, that think not understanding what we need to be, where we need to be, how we need to be, but also knowing that maybe you're not always like that. Like, that maybe you aren't loving right, or maybe there are moments. That's the cleaning the bone out part, right? That's the continual cleaning out. Do you have one of those, by the way? We should definitely. Do you have one? You can't just get one of those, can you? Do you have one?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, cool! I want to see it. But but I think that it is that is part of it. Even getting to maybe a place of confidence with yourself and how you feel in this world and whatever. I'm not saying it's over. I'm not saying the work is over.
No,
I mean,
right.
it's not. It's
right.
It's always going to be a continual. I guess maybe the world is always continually challenging that idea that you have of yourself that's bringing you confidence in who you are. And so maybe there's always the bone cleaning business that has to continue to happen so that you can kind of stay in that place of contentment with who you are in a world that is maybe not as content as you are with itself.
One thing too is I think it's about how we support each other, how we show up for each other. I'll give you an example. I know of this guy. I'm going to screw up his name. His first name is Hunter. I want to say it's Flundroy, but he runs a group. I think it's called Spirit Visions, where he's doing very similar work. There's this young guy you just mentioned, Trevor James, who is running gay men retreats, I think in Costa Rica.
Right.
And looking at his website and his material, definitely very much in alignment with this kind of energy that we're creating here. And so I think supporting each other, people who are doing this work, Wolf Martinez in New Mexico.
Right.
There are places where this work is accessible, and the Radical Fairies in their own capacity. I may not understand Radical Fairy philosophy and but what I know is they've created community that says there's more to this than just this surface kind of reaction we see. So we need to support each other.
Definitely.
So,
as a closing note, I'm just thinking, like you said, the work isn't over. It's a continual process of doing our own work, still cleaning the bone. And in yoga, yoga is a practice. And I constantly say in class, this is a practice. And yes, I've been teaching for over 25 years. That doesn't make me an expert of yoga. I'm still practicing. I see myself having a teaching practice. I'm learning just as you're learning. And if we can maybe show up in that capacity, all of us, the three of us and those that are listening to this and come to our retreats and events, it's just practice. Sometimes you'll be in tree pose and trying to balance on one foot and you fall over. Oh well, we do that. That happens. That's life. But if we have support and a community that's going to not judge you because you fell, but lift you up and carry you forward, the practice becomes that much more meaningful. And so keep on practicing, even if it's hard, even if you don't feel like it sometimes. Take breaks when you need to, but then come back to it. And I think you will start to see those mentors and the mentorships that are around you. You'll start to see the teacher and guru and mentor within you, and what you're demonstrating and showing in the world just by being you, because you're doing your work. We are having a retreat in September, and I think, even though we're recording this in July, I think it's showing, I think you're listening to this in September. So the September retreat is September 19th, is that right? Remember the dates? Oh no! Look on the website, it's in September. mindfullygay.com. Our fall retreat. If you happen to be in Salt Lake City, join us. Be a part of this. Be in the presence of. Share your stories. We welcome it all. And just as you are listening to this for yourself, maybe share this particular episode with someone who could benefit from it. So I think that's it, you guys. We want to thank you for listening, and we look forward to seeing you in the next episode of the Mindfully Gay podcast.
Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Mindfully Gay podcast. If you enjoyed our conversation today, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. This way you won't miss out on any of our upcoming episodes, where we continue to explore fascinating topics and share meaningful stories. Your support means the world to us. See you in the next episode.